And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin' Bible podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talkin' Bible. I am down for our final episode of recording of today's sitting, but it's not the final episode for the week. It's only the second episode for this week. I'm sitting down with Adrian Gallagher. Hello, Adrian.
Hello again.
And we're talking today on Tuesday's episode about Jesus' ministry. It's John 4. This is following on from the famous part, the first half of John 4, where Jesus has this strange encounter with this woman at the well in Samaria, and he says all kinds of cryptic stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah.
This is the back end of the story. So a bit of context. So what's happened is Jesus arrived in Samaria and he sent his disciples to go and get food in town. And while they were in town, he had that encounter with that woman. And I was just saying to you off air that Jeannie and I have done this about 5 times, talked about this on our podcast. So you could go to our Anchor Point app and look at John chapter 4 and you would be able to follow the links to all the podcast episodes about John 4. But in the middle of that, after she goes off and tells everyone, about what's happening. Meanwhile, the disciples come back and this is more about his communication with them as a result of them questioning why he's talking to this woman. That's the context, isn't it? So where do you want to go after that?
Well, it could be answered very simply, actually. We're talking about ministry sustains us. I could say, yes, it does.
Okay. How does this story tell us that?
We better get into it. But the basic things, Preacher once said that our life should be fruitful and fulfilled. And I certainly find the ministry stuff that God's given me as being very fulfilling.
Yep.
And sometimes the strange stuff, once setting up the chairs for a Bible school was very fulfilling.
Yeah.
and that's probably one of the most fulfilling times I've actually. I just really felt good about getting the room set up for the Bible school teacher to come in and teach us.
And you have said this to me multiple times while we've been sitting over on the production desk, and I love the attitude. You say, I liked being something. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the way I've heard you say is something like, I love being able to do things behind the scenes to make your job easier, or something to that effect.
Yeah, that's the sort of way I've worked most of my life.
Yeah.
You can set up the chairs for sure, but if I set up the chairs, you can get ready to teach, which I can't or couldn't do at that stage.
Well, you can. Yeah, you get him. That's right. But you're getting better. But the attitude behind it is always doing what you can do to add value to other people.
Yeah.
So next week, as we record this on Monday, we're off to our annual C3 conference, a bunch of us from staff and team and so on. And part of what I actually take that mentality to the conference. So we've got our team and Jill and I and our team, we're going there not to necessarily just be filled. We're going there to serve. We're going there to help the people who are running the conference. And like Amanda and Kim and all our volunteers from our church are all, basically our church is looking after the whole registration process, a behind the scenes role, but we're doing it for that reason you said, which is we're there to help everything else run so that other people can do what they're called to do. If we're doing something for them, they can do something else. And at all levels of life, that's a good way to live your life. But the funny thing about it is you actually get, which is what this passage is, you actually get fulfilled.
You do, yes.
You get sustained in doing something to add value to other people's lives, don't you? Yeah, well, how's Jesus illustrating that in this story with his words?
It's in some ways it's funny. They said, it says the disciples came and they were amazed that they were speaking to a woman. And again, culturally, you have to
culturally, a rabbi wouldn't speak to a woman, certainly.
You wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And
he wouldn't speak to a Samaritan or a woman, so he's a double whammy there.
Yeah. But apparently they didn't ask why did you speak to her. But then she left a water pot, which she'd come to do, so she forgot to ask. And she went to the city and said to the men, which again seems interesting, were women allowed to talk to men?
Are women allowed to talk to men?
I guess she knew them. He says, come see a man who told me all the things I've done. Now, I would not want to tell people
everything I've done.
Everything I've done.
And this is a woman. He's just basically told her, look, you've had 4 husbands, and the fella you're with 5 husbands, and the guy you're shaking out with right now, he's not your husband. You got to have a significant change of heart to go and do that. Hey,
yeah. But however, they actually came out to the.
They came out.
They come out and said, oh, okay, righto. And again, these are people who the Pharisees wouldn't like him talking to because
absolutely not. These are Samaritans.
Yeah.
And this woman she was low caste in their own society. So she was like the bottom of the bottom of people who anyone would reach out to. But she had such a radical encounter with Jesus that she turned from being a person who wouldn't talk to anybody and would hide out in the middle of the day, go and get water because the rest of the women in town were probably shunning her, to a person who had such a radical change that she could go back. And whatever she did was so magnetic that the people who would normally shun her and go, away with you, are suddenly attracted to what she's doing, that they run out and meet Jesus too.
Yeah. But meanwhile, we're just going to talk about what the
disciples said. Yeah.
Like again, that's the interesting thing I think we mentioned before, where they didn't have anything to do with the Samaritans, but they went through their area and bought food off them because they still had to eat.
They still had to eat, yeah.
It's this where you got your standards, but you're willing to break.
You're willing to break your standards when you're hungry.
When you're hungry.
Yeah, exactly.
But Jesus says, I got food to eat that you don't know about.
What a strange statement.
And again, of course it is. So you're there by yourself.
And he sent them to get food because it says he was hungry from the journey. So Jesus was hungry at the start of this story.
So I'm hungry. Go get some food. I had something you didn't know about.
Someone bringing food, they say?
Well, he could have done a loaves and fishes or something.
Yeah, we did. Well, it actually says there, they say, did someone bring him food? Isn't that the question they ask?
Yeah, no one brought him anything to eat, did he?
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
That's what I say,
Yeah, someone brought him food while we were gone.
He had his muesli bar in his pocket.
He got out his protein ball and it nourished him. Yeah, and then he says, "My nourishment comes from doing the will of God who sent me and from finishing His work." So there's a metaphorical nourishment that he's referring to. That in somehow, it's not. To me, it's not just metaphorical. I think it transfers into physical.
I think it does too. Yeah,
the fact that he actually fed this woman, he came to finish the work of the Lord and love this woman, somehow in some biological way, it's actually re-energized his body as well.
Yeah, I found that in the both in chaplaincy and the funeral work, just being there for people, helping them through whatever they needed to go through. You'd forget about lunch and stuff like that. You just didn't need it.
Yeah, it becomes sustaining in itself.
Yeah. We did in the funeral industry make sure we always had a muesli bar in our pocket just in case. Hours longer than expected.
Yeah, that's a handy thing to have. But it's a really important principle because I'm all for well-being, and I don't think the Christian church in our country in the past has always done a good job of focusing on well-being for those in ministry and those in church life and volunteers in church life. And it's been a little bit at times the pendulum was a bit far swung towards just burnout for Jesus, right? I'm not advocating for that. But I am concerned that part of what I see in some aspects of the narrative of the church is that we're now overcompensating. And we've gone back the other way is, don't do anything, don't want to burn yourself out. Everyone's tired, everyone's busy and so on. And I think this scripture, there's got to be something in this kind of message here which says, don't fall back into that mentality of thinking, I'm too tired to do it, I'm too hungry. Jesus would actually advocate for, if you get back in and you actually do ministry and get back in a volunteer roster and be a part of the church, you'll actually find that might sustain you. And if you stay away from that, you're going to get more hungry and more tired. So there is definitely a spiritual component that comes from being engaged. I'm not advocating for signing up for a roster in church every week or anything like that. I mean, there's a few of us that are called to that, but most people can sign up for something once or twice a month. I don't think that's unreasonable. And I think, to be honest, I think it's good for you. It will sustain you.
Yeah, there's a feeling of belonging
that comes with it too.
You're part of it.
Yeah. So that feeling of belonging means purpose. And back to what we're talking about next week, it's ironic that we are, our team will be on the roster and looking after the desks, and some of them will be out in the foyer area when the sessions are on doing different things. But there will be a sustaining that comes from that, and there'll be a sense of I'm a part of this thing, I'm adding value to this thing. And then it'll open doors. It'll open doors for relationships that they wouldn't have had otherwise and things like that. So I think it's good to do things to serve others, and you will be sustained in the process.
And then he goes on to the, Jesus says there are yet 4 months and then comes the harvest. He's talking about doing things in preparation for things. He talks later about saying one sows and another reaps. And so in his case, Jesus there was sowing into that woman. Someone else would reap it. You get it Paul later saying, I sow, Apollos waters.
And God gives the increase.
God gives the increase, So there's that. So we don't say, okay, I'm not doing this now because it's not the right time. No, you do the things when they are there to be done, and you don't expect the results straight away, it's going to come later.
And he that's exactly what he's developing that theme, and he's rebuking the attitude of 4 months more between planting and harvest, or 4 months more and then the harvest, as if, well, the time's not right now. I don't have to do anything right now. But Jesus, they know that even during the planting and the harvest, you don't sit and do nothing. There's weeding to be done. There's work to be done. There's more planting to be done. So he's trying to rebuke the attitude of sit around and wait for God to do it all, and recognize that there's always work. And in fact, he's saying, open your eyes, because the harvest is ready right now, is what he says. Open your eyes, be ready. The harvest is ready. The fields are already ripe for harvest, he says. There's always, at any given time, there's always fields that are ripe for harvest if we have that attitude of, I'm going to work for God's kingdom. You could come into church thinking, I'm just going to do a greeting. I'll just go on the greeting roster, completely unaware that someone's going to walk in the door of that church who's ready for harvest. And you get to be a part of that, greeting that person, welcoming that person, saying, hello, great to see you today. Who knows that you might be the person that God uses to bring them to Christ or to make them feel like they're part of the family. That's a privilege. That's a huge privilege.
Yeah. And because we're most of us aren't in that agricultural society where you have to do that. We've got relatives elsewhere who are in that. But, they've got to do stuff all year.
Yep.
And there's this mad rush over 6 weeks, I think, with the harvest season. And they got, machines that are worth $250,000 that they only use for those 6 weeks.
That's right. Yep, sit there.
And do them. But then you've got to plant and all those other things.
You've got to prepare the soil, as all those processes, isn't it?
And you've got to hope that the rain comes and various other things. But we're not into that sort of thing, so we don't quite understand it.
Don't get it.
But in the Christian church, it's not like that. There's not a season where there's always people who are getting seeds planted into them, and there's always people who are ready to be harvested, and it's one plant at a time rather than a
good point. And that's what Jesus is saying by there's always harvest ready. So what you're saying is that at any given Sunday in a church or in any given Wednesday in a connect group or whatever, there will be the full range. There'll be seeds being planted, there'll be seeds being watered, and there'll be seeds being harvested.
Yep.
And very often in our own life, even to stretch the metaphor further, I've got certain areas of my life where I'm moving into a time of harvest, but there's going to be other areas in my life where God is planting seeds that are just getting started. So we're in this perpetual agricultural growth phase as a church. And Jesus is rebuking them for sitting around and going, come on, get out there and do some work. Be used. Enjoy the process. Because there's a joy attached to this. The harvesting is a joyful time. And doesn't he say, what joy awaits both the planter and the harvester alike? So there is always a joy attached to harvest. In ancient times, that's countercultural. Because Proverbs will say, you sow in tears and you reap in joy.
Yep.
And you think about it, the planting season in an agricultural season is going to be the toughest time. Yes. You got to prepare the soil. You're out there, oftentimes in the heat, putting seeds in the ground, and no sign of anything happening.
And you have no idea if
it's going to happen. And especially in that culture, they had no guarantees that the rains would come, as you said. So there's why there's a sowing in tears. And then the harvest season comes, and that's the time when they party and rejoice. But Jesus is saying in the kingdom it's not like that. But you can rejoice in the sowing as much as in the reaping. Yeah,
because something's going to come of it.
Yeah.
If you're sowing genuine seeds, then something's
going to come of that. And I wonder if we get to be with the Lord one day, and we look back and we see the little things that we did. You on a production desk, sowing seeds, producing something that will help people to meet Jesus. You cannot underestimate how God will take that and turn that into a harvest, because he does that with all of us.
Yeah. So it's probably in the populistic, whatever story, but a pastor was saying that how God was talking about crowns. And he thought he'd get a big one because he was an evangelist type thing.
Yeah.
And God said, see that little lady in the front there? She prays during all your meetings.
Yeah, that's right. There's a big crown for that.
Yeah. So, and there's also that other scripture that I go to where he talks to the Pharisees praying their prayers and stuff, and Jesus says they've got their reward. Sadly, I think there's a lot of people on earth who have got a lot of earthly rewards. And because in some cases they've been going for them.
Yep, as though that's what they really want.
Yeah. And, okay, they got their reward. Meanwhile, the other people who've gone with a better attitude of heart will get their heavenly rewards.
I'm not by any means perfect at this, but I remain continually grateful for some words that Margaret and Bob, particularly Margaret, my pastor when we were first Christians, discipled us in. And she said, Rohan, you do everything you do as unto the Lord. And I have stuck with that memory of that, and regularly looked at that and gone, everything I do is for Jesus. The things that are seen and the things that are unseen, he sees them. And ultimately, if no one else sees them, he sees them. And that was, I would say that was drummed into me as a young disciple. And it shapes, I know Jill and I often talk about it, it shapes what we do and why we do what we do. Not perfectly, because, there's still ego and you still like appreciation and all that. But generally speaking, I think I'm grateful for the fact that those words have discipled me to go, I'm doing what I'm doing out of gratitude to God. And because I get to plant seeds and reap harvest in other people's lives, therefore I'll do it for that reason and that reason alone. What have you got in your notes there as we close?
It's again, the last verse says, I sent you to reap that for which you have not laboured, others have laboured and you have entered into their labour. The church work is a combined work.
Yep.
From what you're saying, from the person at the front door welcoming you to you, whoever's preaching and worship leaders and stuff. And we all do a little bit, but we all benefit from whatever other people do. And particularly with salvation, someone's out there, you get the evangelists who want everyone saved.
Yes, yep.
But that's all they want.
That's all they want. They move on to the next one. Yep.
You just suddenly got 100 new Christians.
Yeah, yep. And they all need cleaning. The fish need cleaning.
And they need someone to look after them for the next 50 years.
Yeah, that's right.
But again, they've planted the seeds. It's grown. Now out of that, you get the benefit of being able to do your ministry.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other people and stuff, and then they join into the ministry and.
Well, that's why the Apostle Paul will pick up in 1 Corinthians 12 the analogy of the body of Christ. It's a great analogy for the church, isn't it? That we are all interlinked. We're all interdependent upon one another. Even the concept of fishing. Jesus says, "Follow me, and be fishers of men." We instantly, if we don't think carefully about it, we instantly picture fishing the way we do it today, with a rod. But they fished with nets as a team. So I think that's in itself is that it's that as the church, we are fishing with nets. We are a team. We are working together to build the kingdom. It's not any one, it's not the man of God syndrome or the woman of God syndrome. It's us all together doing our part to create a net that will catch fish.
And with the body analogies, I forget how many organs I've got. And I don't know what most of them do.
No.
I know my heart's in there beating millions of times through my life and pumping blood through, but I don't know how it does it. And I couldn't do that.
Yep.
and there's other bile glands and stuff. And it's in the Christian church, there's people doing stuff. I know they're doing stuff, but I don't really know
where it fits.
How it all fits and stuff. And I couldn't do their work. Right.
That is a really important point, because one of the things that I come up against a lot, and it's almost because of this naivety, is it's very hard and I'm guilty of this too, but it's very hard for us to see. Let's put it this way, we tend to think that our role in the body is more important than it is.
Yes.
That the body wouldn't function without my role. Well, that may be true, but what we do is we fail to recognize the other roles in the body, or we elevate the importance of our role, and we, rather than devalue our role and value others, and it leads to frustration, because you start to get cynical and critical about other people who you don't think are pulling their weight because you don't see them doing anything, but they might be doing a whole lot of stuff behind the scenes that's not visible that you don't see. So that avoids, if you can have that attitude of everyone's important, it'll avoid cynicism and critical spirit. Also, too, it keeps humility. If you go, well, look, I'm not really that important. I don't see the whole picture. People come to me and say, this is the most important thing in the church, Pastor, but it's only just through their lens. It might be important, but if I'm going to just jump in, take your bit of advice and make it all about what you're suggesting, there's a whole bunch of other body parts that are going to suffer. So altogether, we need to have a big picture, and I don't have the full picture. I have to trust God with that. When we go off to conference next week, I don't have the full picture of what's going on, but we're going to do our part as a small part of the body to add value to the rest of the body. It's a good, healthy mentality to have. And the irony of it is to sum all this up, is that's what sustains us. We get fed by playing our part.
And if we play the wrong part, it probably makes us hungry.
It will.
makes us hungry for what we should be doing. Yeah.
And it makes us dissatisfied with what we have.
Yeah.
Or dissatisfied with what we perceive others are bringing to the table.
Yeah, trying to do the thing that's not your thing is always
It's always hard work.
hard work, and
Find your fit.
and it takes away that role from someone who could be doing it and doing it better and getting blessed for it,
Yep.
and all these other things. It's all complicated, isn't it?
Well, the body is complicated, and the body doesn't always function perfectly.
It doesn't.
But
No.
that's okay. We figure it out as we go by working together and serving one another and preferring one another over ourselves. All right, enough there.
Enough there.
All right, thanks for being with us, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody.